What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys are so excited. I hope you guys are so ready for the most impactful hour you have ever received in your entire life, filled with hope, positivity, encouragement, inspiration, motivation, and elevation, baby. So pull up a chair, pour up a couple of shots, let your hair down, and kick your shoes off because you are about to receive the most impactful hour in your entire lives. I know you guys are ready because I know I am, and I can't wait, baby. Let's go! Woo!
Hello, how y'all doing? Hi, Joseph. I hear that you have a show, not famous, and wish you good luck with your show, and I thank you what you're doing for your audience and your people that you're trying to make impression on their life. So good luck with your show, and thank you for all you do. Bye, Joseph.
We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's the after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
What a great organization and a show that offers hope, optimism, creative solutions, entertainment.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph. It's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello, everybody. This is not a Zoom background. I am live on location. This is Fifth Avenue, or kind of between 5th and 6th Avenue, Bryant Park in the background. I am in the process where I will be teaching later. So it is not actually November 1st at 9 p.m. or it is November 1st at 9 p.m. So play along with me. Normally I wouldn't do this, but as you will see when Gregarious gives his vignette on entrepreneurship, he does reference Colin Powell, who passed away today. And I just felt under the circumstances that we would be as transparent as possible. Why pretend that it is the future when in fact it is the present? And speaking of presents, what a gift to have my guest Dorie Clark in the studio. In fact, I just found out that she's actually closer to me than I thought. So we're waving to each other virtually, I suppose. Now, even though it is November 1st at 9 p.m., well, what that means is that you can still get JAFFE coin. So that QR code right now is working because you are seeing this at 9 p.m. on November 1st. Are you confused yet? Because I'm just a little confused. But if you point your phone to that QR code, it is live only from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. And again, this is how we recognize and reward the streaming era, the creator economy, community, and people that are watching us live right now. Now, just a little bit of a recap. In fact, you do not want to even see this because this doesn't even apply because this is this week's guest. What you really want to be doing is focusing on the seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy today is very aptly called The Long Game. And it is very much connected to my guest and her amazing, amazing book, as you will see from the soliloquy. I just love books, and especially books that sell the entire idea, the whole pitch, in just the title and the subtitle, like The Tipping Point. It might seem simple, but it's utter genius. I've tried to crack the code with all of my books: Life After the 30-Second Spot, Join the Conversation, Flip the Funnel, Built to Suck. I'm not sure I succeeded. Then there's The Long Game, How to Be a Long-Term Thinker in a Short-Term World. Boom, mic drop, home run. Do you honestly need to hear more to want to read more? That was rhetorical. And lucky for you tonight, I have the author with me on the show. Oh, and here's another stroke of her ego. How is it possible no one wrote this before? Kind of like How is it possible no one created a ride-sharing app before Uber? Follow my logic here? In Built to Suck, I spoke about the coming corporate apocalypse and its accompanying 4 horsemen. One of them was being a public company, and with that, the CTD, or corporate transmitted disease, of short-termitis. The Groundhog Day purgatory of quarterly earnings is a public company's kiss of death. And while I certainly amplified the problem and even alluded to a solution, perhaps I even used the phrase the long game, I never wrote a book about it. Hell, I'm not even sure I wrote a chapter on it. With that said, here's my take on this ultimate conundrum, this contradiction: how to balance short-term pain with long-term gain. Now that I think about it, the complete reverse is actually true. Short-term gain is the surefire way to result in long-term pain. Companies need a North Star, a vision, and a mission alone is meaningless unless there's a plan, a roadmap to help them achieve meaningful momentum and sustainable competitive advantage. The problem is perhaps what I would now call corporate ADHD. Distraction, impatience, lack of focus, inability to stay the course, not enough endurance. Perhaps if people kept their jobs long enough, this would be different. Now, for me, the long game is about survival. Survival with a view towards thrival. But how do you get there? My solution: reverse engineer the long game with medium-term milestones and short-term wins. Faith and trust alone won't cut it. Quick wins might, for it is the short-term win that buys you the ultimate prize, the gift of living to fight another day. Now it's time to bring Dorie onto the show. And as you will see, I told Dorie that there'd be a few little surprises, but I have decided, based on the book title, that she is the author of The Long Game, and why not? Dorie Clark teaches at Duke University's School of Business, and she is the author of The Long Game, Entrepreneurial You, Reinventing You, and Stand Out, which was named the #1 leadership book of 2015 by Inc. magazine. A former presidential campaign spokeswoman, the New York Times described her as an expert at self-reinvention and helping others make changes in their lives. A frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, she consults and speaks for clients, including Google, Microsoft, the World Bank. You can download her free Long Game self-assessment workbook and learn more at dorieclark.com/the long game. And I will make sure that I show that to you when, shortly and later in the show. Let's say hello to Dorie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Joseph, I'm so glad to be here with you. My neighbor now in New York City, so I am waving.
And I am waving back to you as well, and trying not to rock the boat or rock the toilet roll, whatever is holding this laptop up. But Dorie, today is actually aptly, it's National Authors Day, and who better to have than a multiple best-selling author? And obviously, we're here to celebrate your new book, The Long Game. But before we get there, I always like to start off with what I call fun facts, so that we get to learn a little bit about our guest. And here are the fun facts that we learned about you, and hopefully not too embarrassing. Well, first of all, what we learned is that you actually have performed as a stand-up comedian, and I have performed as a very, very poor Photoshop retoucher. So with that aside, I know that you have pivoted away from stand-up comedy to now musical comedy, but there's definitely a common thread, which is, well, first of all, what role does comedy play in terms of business and effective communication, and more importantly, the ability to be a stand-up comic and improv as it relates to being able to pivot to adjust to course correct?
One of the things that I learned when I was taking stand-up lessons, which I really focused a lot on in 2016 and 2017, was that if you're doing stand-up well, you were supposed to hit a punchline approximately every 10 seconds, which sounds stunning. I mean, I like, how many words can you even say? It's like you have to keep the audience in these rolling laughs. And the way you do it is that you have to continually refine what you say to take words out. The problem with bad jokes, assuming the premise is decent, the problem is that we are too verbose and we step on ourselves. We kind of kill the joke because we say so much it stops being funny. And I think that's actually a great lesson for all of us, that we need brevity. We need to think how to simplify and to get at the essence of what we want to do and what we want to convey.
It really struck me in your response that these 10-second punchlines, these 10-second almost triggers to keep the audience's attention, are in a way these short-term, the tyranny of short-term and immediate gratification. But it keeps you in the game, at least with your, I guess, with the ability to get to that final, crescendo or final climax.
It's true. And, having written The Long Game, I want to make clear, I don't really want to knock short-term thinking or short-term gains. Sometimes we need it. You need to have, life is both a sprint and a marathon. It's not that one is inherently better than the other. And certainly during the events of 2020, we all had to pivot really quickly. Short-term thinking was necessary. That was fine. That was good. And in comedy, it's the little bits, the quick hits that keep us engaged, as you say. But also, short-termism can't be the only thing. We can't only be short-term thinkers. And so I think now it's time to recalibrate toward long-term thinking, just as when you're doing comedy, it's the short, little bits that roll up together into the thesis that you want to express in your comedy.
Well, one of the things that is very fleeting and short-term, and let's see if I got this right, is that you've become an expert latte artist. And I'm just wondering if I got it right. Is this what we're talking about? I hope it's not, for example, like some form of teaching or meditation. But this was my interpretation of what latte art is. Am I on the right track?
I love the idea that it could be, like the latte method of organizational development.
Yeah, exactly.
It's capital L period A period. Yeah. How did you miss that, Joseph? No, it is true. I have been committing myself over the past year to becoming better at latte art. And so every morning, I have a fancy coffee machine now. So I've been attempting to do this. I have to say, I've never actually come up with something quite as pretty as what you are picturing, but I have learned how to make it foamy enough so that I can do a little heart. And I think it's kind of cute.
The heart is great. And, for me, obviously, having had heart surgery this year, I'm very attached to anything heart related. And having a heart is something, and you are full of heart. But you wrote, and I want to get straight into it because it's just, as I said, I could not gush enough in my soliloquy because just like great startups, I always say when I'm mentoring, I say the two signs of a great concept are, number one, it's so simple, I could have thought of that. And number two, damn it, why didn't I think of that? And this book needed to be written, and specifically by someone like yourself. It's just so important because companies are just trapped. It is purgatory. They cannot get out of their own way because of this trap, this curse of short-termitis.
Well, thank you for the kind compliment, Joseph. I appreciate it. And it makes me so happy to be on your show because I have been hearing about you literally for years. And so your name was very familiar to me when our mutual friend Chris reached out and brokered the connection. So it makes me very happy to get to connect with you and be part of this.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been tracking you for a long time. But with regard to the book, I appreciate, since I know obviously you are keenly attuned to the marketing elements of things, this really was a concerted goal for me my previous books, I mean, I have, all the props, right? I've got Stand Out, I've got Entrepreneurial You, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't come up with the names for any of these books because I had a concept, but I could never figure out the right name. And so my publisher, ended up coming up with the names for all the books, and that's fine. But what I realized is, of course, coming out of marketing as well, I realized retrospectively, I was so eager to write books. I had kind of done the process wrong because, just like you wouldn't want to create a product in the marketplace and then, sort of slap a name on it post facto. I really think that a good name is so integral to the creation and the purpose, the teleology of the book, that I wanted to do this one differently. And so from the beginning, I wanted to start with a title, and I wanted to come up with a title that would truly, as you said, encapsulate the premise in a way so that when someone heard it, they said, I want that, I need that, and they would get it. And, I think my other books, I'm very proud of them. I think they're good books, but the titles are not distinctive the way that I want them to be. And so for the long game, I really started at the other end of the equation. So I appreciate you noticing that.
And, there's so many, and by the way, I've turned my entire virtual studio into an homage to the long game. We've even got, you're even as you can see at the top, you are the official sponsor of this episode. There you go. There's your logo as well.
Unbelievable. Thank you. I love it. It's
well, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it and a few things, but there were a few phrases that I started to pick out, when I was reading the blurb on the book. But there was something that you actually sent me above and beyond that I actually thought was even more interesting. You spoke about this concept of strategic patience. And so immediately I looked at it and I said, well, wait a second. I know what patience is, but what is strategic patience? The qualifier is important. So tell us what strategic patience is, and certainly in context of this idea of staying the course and not getting distracted. The corporate, what did I call it? Corporate ADHD.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joseph. And you're exactly right. I do think of strategic patience as being something fundamentally different than what I will call garden variety patience. Regular patience is something that I think in a lot of ways people tell you as a way of blowing you off. Honestly, in my life, I have heard so many times, just be patient. Just be patient and things will happen. Just be patient and things will work out. And I want to know, first of all, who says? And second of all, I really began to get the impression like, oh, this is how when you are agitating too much, people tell you, step back, calm down. Patience, on one hand, patience is important because it is true that some things just do take a while. If you have a glass bottle of Heinz ketchup, you just have to wait. It's just going to come when it comes, right? But that being said, I also don't really want to live in a world where the best advice out there is, oh, just sit back in your Barca lounger and make a Pinterest board and maybe things will happen. That is not how I want to live my life at all. I want a more muscular form of patience, which to me implies, okay, yes, we acknowledge we don't like it, but we acknowledge that things often take a while and you can't control that. But there are things you can control, and that involves formulating a hypothesis, testing it out, seeing how much progress you're making, if you're making the progress that you anticipated, pivoting as necessary, and recognizing, all right, this could be a while, but I'm willing to do what is necessary and to watch it and evaluate it and make changes where I can so that I can actually get there and deserve to get there.
That's it. It's such a great point. And as you were talking, I jotted down the idea of patience with a plan. That's strategic patience. It's patience with a plan. It's not patience as in come back later or, out to lunch, come back 5 minutes later. So it's patience, but there is a plan, there is a purpose. It's part of something bigger. And I love the way you set it up, which is we are, as entrepreneurs, as creatives, as disruptors, as teachers, we're impatient by definition. We in fact, as humans, we're probably impatient. We want action, we want results, we want to move, we don't want to stagnate. And so to me, this whole essence of this book is about balance. And it's not just about equal, it's how do you find the balance between short and long, between patient and impatient. And that has to be surely both art and science.
Absolutely. I'm curious, Joseph, in your own life, how do you think about playing the long game? What are the ways that that calls up something for you?
So I will give you a very personal account, and one that I'm living through right now with my show, with this biggest pivot that I've made, in my entire life. So I've looked at this, and I've basically, first of all, I heard a piece of advice early on, and our mutual friend Chris Brogan, one of the most delightful, wonderful human beings, and actually our shows have brought us closer together. In the most beautiful way. But early on in the process, when both of us started to stream, I heard some advice. And the advice to me was, if you're starting a streaming show, if you're not prepared to commit to it for 2 years without any fail, without any kind of hesitation, then stop now. Don't even start it. Do not move forward. And so what I'm looking at right now, I'm manifesting success. What is success for the show and for me? CNBC, Cheddar, it is being picked up by an outlet, expanding my audience. But I've already written, the headline. It's overnight success, 3 years in the making. So that's how I'm looking at it. It will happen like this. But the blood, the sweat, the tears, the toil, that will all be there in the background. And quite frankly, I will love every single second of it, no matter how painful it was during the process.
Yeah, I think that's so great. I really appreciate where you're coming from with that, Joseph. And in fact, in the long game, one of the points that I make, people often ask, obviously, this is it varies by individual. Obviously, it is more art than science. But people often ask, how long does it take to be able to, largely what I advise people on. This is the concept behind a course, an online course and community I run, is about becoming a recognized expert. And so people will often say, well, how long does it take to become a recognized expert? And there's not one fixed answer. But what I often will advise people, because I've gotten to see a very large cross section at this point, because 600 plus people have gone through the program. And typically what I have seen, both in my own experience and looking at all of these other folks, is that typically, to your point, it takes about 2 to 3 years to show what I would say is almost any meaningful feedback or signs of success. And I would say it takes usually about 5 years to have a clear and demonstrable success. And, it feels like a long time when you are in the thick of it, when you're in the middle of it and you are not, you're a year in and you're not getting the results that you want. It can be enormously frustrating, which is why so many people quit. But also by the time you get to year 4, year 5, year 6, you have built up such a competitive moat between you and everybody else, because you have that much more experience. You have that much more brand and name recognition and connections. And it actually really can be and feel like an overnight success, because you've put in the time, while the world was not watching, and it enabled you to get further ahead than anybody.
Yeah, it's so true. And as you were talking, and I was thinking about this, I was thinking about two concepts that we're quite familiar with. One extremely in business, one is certainly as old as time, and the other one may be a little bit more recently. So the older one is the concept of the 5-year plan. So you spoke about 5 years in terms of like demonstrable success. And then the other one is the concept of 10,000 hours, the whole concept of 10,000 hours, which might approximate to 2 to 3 years. When we triangulate both of those ideas, what is the Dorie Clark point of view in terms of not just time frame, but also methodology?
Yeah, I think you raise a really interesting point. So a common usage of 5-year plans, I mean, lots of people have 5-year plans, but most famous historically, 5-year plans are run by communist regimes. And so I would say the place where they often fall down, if anyone out here who's tuning in is running a communist regime or plans to run one, what I would say is that typically the problem with communist regimes' 5-year plans, and hopefully for all of us who are not doing that, we can avoid this peril. They were too inflexible, and they would come up with a 5-year plan, and then everybody would do that plan, and market conditions, the conditions of the world would change, but the 5-year plan didn't change. And you can get in a huge amount of trouble that way, because you need to be flexible and responsive to cues and to developments, and to be able to harness things and to change when there's new information or new developments. So I think we need the balance of having the plan, but also being nimble with the plan. And I think largely what I'd say is we need to hold things lightly. And something that actually is surprisingly liberating about having long-term plans is that, sometimes people hesitate to create a long-term plan. Let's say a 10-year plan or something, because they say, oh, but I wouldn't know how to get there. I don't know how to do it. That's good. That's fine. The truth is, no matter what people tell themselves, nobody knows how to accomplish a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan. The world is going to change way too much for us to have figured it out now. Instead, what we need is the North Star that we are moving toward. And really all we can do is just figure out the next best step. And if we keep doing that, it enables us to move in the right direction so that we either get there or we get very close to getting there, or at a minimum, we start going there, we see something better, and then we go do that instead, which is equally fine.
The next best step is a fantastic way to crystallize and bring this to life. And by the way, Marsha Muller is here, and she says, "Love it, Dorie. The recognized export community is powerful and has launched many to success."
Oh,
so,
that's so kind. Thanks for tuning in, Marcy.
So thank you, Marcy, as well. So just to close the thread, I mean, first of all, I love this idea, but if there is no more 5-year plan, then what is there? Is there a time frame on it? Or in fact, do we move towards, which I love, the North Star, this idea of we're moving, we're not standing still, and we're moving in the right direction, and constantly triangulating or pivoting or tweaking, not just course correcting, but sometimes realizing there's a better course.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying don't necessarily hold the plan. I'm just saying we should not overly wed ourselves to it. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. So number one, for me personally, I have a 20-year goal, Joseph, of becoming a United States ambassador. Now, in order to actually figure out how to do that, I would technically need to know who was going to be president in 20 years. And then I would have to map out how I was going to get into their inner circle such that I could do that. That seems very hard to predict. And so I'm not trying to predict it. I am just trying to, keep it on the horizon, see where there might be connections or opportunities. And when there are, begin in small ways to move toward that. That's all. It's not like I'm actively on a day-to-day basis pursuing my 20-year goal, but I'm keeping my antennae out. And I think for a 20-year goal, that's all you really need to do. Now, sometimes you have a goal where you look at it and you realize, that's actually not the right thing anymore. So for instance, I used to have a goal, which was a, say 10 to 15-year goal of becoming a university president. And I decided that would be really cool. I always loved academia. I thought that would be amazing. And so I have, in different ways, continued to work toward it. So I actually serve on the board of a university now and have immersed myself in learning about university governance. Now, that being said, as I have watched how campus climates have evolved in recent years, I have decided, oh boy, I don't want to be a university president. That would probably be the wrong job for me. So I am very happy serving my alma mater, Mary Baldwin University, on their board of trustees. I love it. But I've decided, all right, I don't necessarily need to be a university president. And so it was through exploring and through moving toward that goal that I was able to make the determination that, you know what, maybe I'll get a different one.
I am going to put a little bow on this part of the conversation and actually realize, and this for me was illuminating, that ultimately what I see materializing is many different plans of many different lengths, but all of them being flexible, adaptable, and most importantly, people being able to be open to recognizing that in fact the plan may not be perfect. And so today, Gregarious, in his weekly entrepreneurial contribution, has sent this in, and it's titled Ego.
Avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. That was General Colin Powell. This morning we found out that he passed away. I think there's so much relevance in this small quote, but I think it's really important for all of you aspiring entrepreneurs out there. As entrepreneurs, it is almost impossible sometimes to disconnect or separate ourselves from our businesses. Our identities become entwined in them. And as a result of that, when the company does well, we feel better. When a company does poorly, we feel like crap. Now, this is not an easy task, and it's not a fast task to get used to, but I think it is important that you start from the beginning to create the emotional and intellectual distance between you and your business. While every business is going to have ups and downs, our emotional roller coaster is way wavier because we figure out ways to be upset about things not being big enough or bad enough, depending on the moment. Now, the reality is this: your company, your business is an expression of you, but it is not you. And the sooner and the better and the faster that you actually adapt to that idea, the more likely you are to be able to enjoy the work you're doing, but also enjoy being who you are.
I thought it was interesting to, obviously that quote from Colin Powell, but also the word ego. And I feel like ego really needs to be a part of this conversation because it is the ability to step back and to take criticism and to be able to recognize that, that the ability to adapt is the biggest gift we could ever receive. And so I wonder what you thought about that. And specifically, I remember when I wrote Built to Suck, talking about success theater and how many leaders just surround themselves with yes people and aren't able to figure out how to, survive in the long haul.
Yeah, I think it's so true, Joseph. And, ultimately, there's 2 points that I rely on when I think about this question about feedback. One is I try to be as open as I can to feedback from the market, because the market's not trying to diss me. The market does not have it in for me. The market is a mechanism that shows me what is wanted, what is needed, what is desired. But I'm an idiot if I take it personally that, the people out there are not buying my thing. I really need to respond to that. That is crucial to have the humility to do that. And also, feedback from particular individuals, we have to be very careful about applying and taking seriously and listening to. If I have asked someone that I respect for their feedback, then that's great. I think we can learn a ton from them. But I think where so many good people get astray is that sometimes people, for their own agendas, have unsolicited feedback that they will give you about, do this or don't do that, or blah, 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 I liked it better when you had a beard, Joseph, or, like whatever. And, I think you look handsome both ways. But, people say stuff and it gets in your head and you're like, oh God, wait, what? And you're thrown off your game. And I think we have to be very careful about whose feedback from individuals we are taking in.
So you actually do come up with a plan, and it's a very, very deliberate one. And you actually say it's about doing small things over time to achieve our goals. So to me, still, the great resolve is, as the subhead brilliantly says, how to be a long-term thinker in a short-term world. In my soliloquy, I spoke about short-term wins. Just the ability to, as Dr. Evil would say, throw me a frickin' bone. Just something, just keep me happy. But you talk about this idea of repetitive, if I understand it correctly, repetitive tasks and the ability, routine and repetitive tasks. Would that be correct? And I would love for you to just expand on that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a number of things at play here. I mean, you're exactly right. I am a big fan and a big believer in small wins because, we're human, right? We're not robots, and so we do need to motivate ourselves. I come up with all kinds of ways to trick myself. Literally, I feel like my life is like tricking myself into doing good things. So how do I convince myself to take vitamins? Like swallowing pills is just, who wants to do that? That's miserable. I don't want to do that. So I have gummy vitamins. Now, is that like a little ridiculous? Is it very much similar to eating Flintstones when I was 6? Yes, but that is how I take my vitamins. So, that's good. When I am working on a big project, I am certainly not averse to bribing myself with like, Dorie, you can go get an ice cream when you're done. I do things like that all the time to build in the small wins because you do, but a lot of the path to success just absolutely is super boring and super miserable. And some people are not willing to endure that to get to the good stuff. But I feel like, by hook or by crook, we need to trick ourselves into being willing to do it so we can get the good outcome that everybody wants.
That's a really interesting point, this idea of tricking ourselves. And through the small wins, but maybe the small treats, the rewarding ourselves. I guess we're so hard on ourselves that we don't stop and pause. And I know one of the things that you personally are looking to do at the moment, is to create more white space in your calendar. Would that be one of those small wins and small tasks that allows you to pause, maybe not stop, but pause, reflect, introspect, and ultimately figure out how to then move forward?
Well, white space really is critical, of course, because if we are going to play the long game at all, if we're going to have a hope of doing it, we need to have the mental space necessary so that we actually can pull back and ask some of the bigger questions. It's not a function of time. It is a function of making sure that with the time we have, we are not having our head stuck in whatever, oh my God, my inbox. You can't have rational thought when you are under so much stress and so much duress. And so breaking out of that, I think, is really important and really powerful. Now, that being said, guarding the white space, that is something that on a repetitive basis, you have to be so vigilant. And this is something where, in order to enjoy the good stuff of that quality time where you're not feeling rushed, you have to become the fiercest guardian ever to protect your schedule, because the more successful you get, the more people want to get onto it. And it is very, very hard to defend the barricades against the, sometimes lovely Visigoths that want to climb the fortress and invade your calendar.
My time, right? The importance of my time. And I think what you're alluding to, which is really, really hard, is the ability to say no and realize, as they say in the startup world, that a quick no is so much more beneficial than a slow yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So in our time left, I always find a quote, and this is the quote that I found for you, and it's a very well-known quote. You will have no problem whatsoever ciphering or deciphering who said it. But I feel like it's super, super relevant. And, it is a quote that probably you have no doubt, I would say you've probably even used it in a presentation. It's Vince Lombardi. And Vince Lombardi said, in my entire time, in my entire experience, I never lost a single game. I just ran out of time. And I just wonder how you interpret that, because I see the X's and O's. I see the kind of the tactical roadmap in the book's cover. What are your thoughts about this famous quote, and specifically this idea, of managing, cheating, bending, tricking time?
Well, I think this is a very apt quote you tapped, Joseph. Thank you. And I think it's right. I mean, in the long game, I actually have a whole chapter talking about rethinking failure. And one of the key points there is it's not a failure basically until it's over. And it's not over until you say it's over. I mean, assuming you don't die, which I hope for all of us is a long way away. But, ultimately, there are a lot of times where even if the precise thing you wanted did not go the way you wanted. I mean, the truth is, if it's a big enough goal, that is often to be expected. It would be much more surprising if it all unfolded exactly the way you anticipated. But the question is, is it a failure that you did not, get chosen to write for a certain publication or whatever it is? Or is it actually potentially the seeds of a future success because you could submit your work to a different publication and keep submitting until you find one that does publish you? It's just a question of how long the time frame is in revamping it. And I think a lot of it's in our control, because if we say, oh, I guess I failed, I'm done, and then you curl up and die, well, yeah, it is over. But it's not over until you say it is.
Well, of course, it's not over till it's over is another famous quote, Yogi Berra, one of the most classic Yogi Berrisms, that really does show that just by staying in the game, you're staying in the game. And that's kind of part of, I guess, the message of the long game, which is, there's so many quotes jump out at me. This idea of losing the battle to win the war, that's why I talk about survival, that the goal here is stay in the game, give yourself a fighting chance, give yourself a chance to succeed, because guess what? You just might. And that to me is, I cannot wait to devour this book, and devour it I will.
I love that spirit. And I know you have a flight coming up to South Africa, so you will have time, my man, to devour the book. I hope it keeps you good company en route.
So I certainly will. The book, of course, is called The Long Game, and you can buy it at DorieClark.com/long game. You can actually download, I already have done this, download the free long game self-assessment workbook and learn more at DorieClark.com/the long game. And you can connect with Dorie on LinkedIn, on Twitter, in Clubhouse. Do you hang out in the club from time to time?
From time to time, I do. In fact, I'm doing a Clubhouse tomorrow, back in time. When this airs, I'm going to do a Clubhouse back in time. So if you can time travel, if you have a DeLorean, come join me for the Clubhouse with Harvard professor Francis Fry.
That's absolutely brilliant. We've gone forward in time to win the long game, and we've gone back in time to go to the Clubhouse. And if any of that confuses you, just go and hang out on Instagram with Dorie, or maybe you'll even see one of her stand-up comedy acts. Dorie, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will leave you, as I always leave everyone on the show, with the verdict. What did the great Chuck Norris think of Dorie Clark?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And I will be back sometime in the future. Not really sure if it's November 2nd, if it's tomorrow, if it's yesterday. But as long as I'm in the game, I'm in the game. Dorie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph. Great to hang out with you here.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.